we can nourish our body in better ways. And there are also ways that we can save a lot of money.
You can be a little bit polarizing.
We've been encouraged to follow the rules, think in this way, act in this way. That has a big impact on a person because over time, we slowly disconnect and we suppress our natural needs.
You've alluded to doing things a little bit differently.
I am 6 months pregnant and I haven't seen a doctor. I haven't gotten an ultrasound. I haven't taken any prenatals. Pregnancy and birth are the most natural of processes and they don't require intervention.
Okay, you had a reel that went viral, very viral. And what was the underlying message here and why were so many women triggered by this post?
Every action that we take is a reflection of a thought that we first had. The most important, I'm so huge on this.
How do you feel about juice cleanses?
Oh man, is that a rapid fire? That's a long answer one for me.
Welcome to my guest today, Olivia. I have been looking forward to this for a while. I'm so excited to talk to you today. Before we get into it, do you mind sharing a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this as well. I am a bunch of different things, I guess. My name is Olivia. I am a health and wellness and mindset coach. I host retreats all over the country, all over the US. I do coaching, mindset and health coaching, and I run an online community, which is super cool, where we do lots of different things, group coaching, book clubs, health challenges, 30-day challenges, all kinds of different things. And so that is the gist of what I do. And I'm just excited about health and helping people realize greater health.
I really like a lot of your content and how you just come across in general because it goes against the mainstream and you can be a little bit polarizing in some of your posts, which I think is wonderful. But I would love to start out by you defining what health means to you.
Love it. Yeah. So health to me is a state of being. It's an awareness of self. It's a connection to self. I often say that health is connection to self and disease is disconnection from self. I think we often think of health as things that we do, right? If I eat a salad, I'm healthy. If I go to the gym, I'm healthy. And I don't think that's true. I think health is much deeper and much truer to the nature of who we are, like love. Love is who we are. Health is who we are. And the only way to be out of experiencing health or love is to be in a state of not knowing that, not remembering that. And so that's a lot of what I do. And that's how I think about health, which can be quite different, again, from how most people think about health or how we practice health, which is when I do these healthy things, then I think of myself as healthy. But if I go to McDonald's or I eat a piece of pie, then I think of myself as unhealthy. And that's just not the depths and the truth of what I think health really is.
Okay, so in your opinion, someone could be healthy and maybe eat fast food sometimes, but it's more about how they see themselves?
It's definitely how they see themselves for sure. And I think, I think that we can make all kinds of different choices and still be in a state of health. And we see that, right? Like we hear the stories of the person who lived to 105 years old and, drank wine every night and ate cookies. We hear stories of that. And so health isn't a very strict set of things that we do. It's much deeper than that. I think it's being in a state of, like I said, connection to self. It's knowing ourselves. It's knowing who we are and pursuing the truth of what we love to do and how we love to show up in the world. It's being in a state of ease and relaxation around food specifically, right? Some of this health world stuff can be super like dogmatic and rigid. And like, if I eat an Oreo, I'm going to reverse all of my healing progress. And that doesn't feel like health. I don't think that's health at all. Because again, like I said, the reality is that there are people all over the world who eat all kinds of different diets and make all kinds of different choices, and they're thriving. And of course, there's a lot of people who are not thriving. So I think I think it's just deeper than our very specific choices.
Mhm. You spent some time living with and preparing food for billionaires, Jesse Itzler and his wife, Sarah Blakely, who was the inventor of Spanx. What was that experience like?
Yeah, amazing. I mean, it's extraordinary. They were not the only billionaires that I worked for, but they were the most publicized of them all. And it's hard to put into words. I mean, it's just like a totally different world, right? The majority of us live in a different world. And, living in the home of a billionaire, I lived in my RV in their driveway for about 3.5 weeks. So I was very much in their home for that time. And it's just a different world where there's, assistants and, you know, 6 assistants and house cleaners. And like the house is just full of so much life and so much going on all the time. And it was really, really cool to observe. Yeah, just like a different way of living. And they're both just extraordinary people. I have not a single thing to say bad about them. They're exactly who they are as they show up on social media, if people are familiar with them and follow them on social media, and just really genuinely good people that are connected to themselves. They both eat quite different diets and, practice health in different ways, but they're connected. There's no doubt in my mind that those two are connected to the truth of who they are, what they love to do, and it's reflected in the success of their lives.
Mhm. I'm wondering okay, so you make beautiful living raw vegan foods and dishes, and you also have retreats. So you have the different people come and they eat these foods, and maybe who knows the different diets that they're coming from. Maybe they eat like that normally, maybe they never do. How was it different? Did Jesse and Sarah or the other billionaires that you worked with, were they able to pick up this way of eating? Did they adapt to it better, or was there any differences between the different types of people and how they started eating these living raw foods?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it was depending on the person and what their background was. Someone like Jesse, who's been eating a mostly vegan diet, his little thing is fruit till noon for 25 plus years, adapted to it super well because it wasn't a far stretch from the way that he already lives and the way that he already eats. But other people that I worked for, they were just sort of curious. They're just curious about another way of eating, another way of living. And so they would eat the food and they would enjoy it. But then, they would be drinking their Coke, their sodas, and eating other things as well. And that was totally okay too. I was just excited. I'm always just excited to encourage people to fall in love with more plant-based eating, specifically raw food, because that's what I love so much. And so whether it's me being a private chef at someone's house or hosting people for retreats, it's all sorts of different people coming from all sorts of different backgrounds. And I don't have an agenda to convince everyone to go raw vegan, but I do very much hope to excite people around how amazing it can be to eat raw living foods.
Mm-hmm. So I see maybe a theme that it doesn't matter the background you come from or what you make for a living. You can eat like a billionaire and you can eat this diet, which a lot of people think it's, very expensive to eat this way. I've heard that. And yeah, but it's really not, right? Like how would you approach that?
I think the idea that it's more expensive and more time consuming to prepare are both just limited perspectives. I don't think it's true at all. Of course, it can require some getting used to. It can require learning a new skill set and learning new ways to shop. So those things are absolutely true, but I have not found for myself and so many of my clients that this is inherently a more expensive or more challenging, more time consuming way to prepare food. In fact, I found it's just the opposite. I mean, I cut out so many things, right? When you cut out alcohol, how much money do we save? When we cut out processed foods, even going out to restaurants. Not that I never do those things, but they're just not as big of a part of my life as it used to be. Even fast food. Fast food these days is like, it's not super cheap. I think we still kind of are under the belief that going to McDonald's is sort of a cheap way to eat, but I don't think it really is. But yeah, I think it's about learning new ways of doing things and preparing food and shopping. And it doesn't have to be very expensive at all. It truly doesn't.
Hmm. Yeah, so I was raw vegan for about a year, and my diet just kind of evolves over time. But yeah, speaking of it not being necessarily less expensive to eat a different way, I mean, I remember I would have a melon for a meal. And so if you think of like a melon and the cost of like whether you go to Publix or Costco or whatever your store is, that's probably going to be about $5. And if you go through McDonald's, it's probably going to be about $5. And the difference in what you're putting in your body is just, I mean, one has nutrients and one you could say doesn't have any nutrients.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree. I think it definitely, I mean, there's so many different ways of doing things. And I think one of the really cool parts of talking about connection to self is I notice for myself, and I notice in a lot of other people, that when we start to eat in a way that's more aligned with nature, we become more in tune with nature. So people often feel inspired to start growing their own food, right? Start growing their own gardens, start planting fruit trees, start maybe doing some sprouts or microgreens in their kitchen. And so we start connecting more. And those are all ways that we can nourish our body in better ways. And there are also ways that we can save a lot of money, right? You can save so much money you get one little tomato plant, even if you just live in an apartment and you have just a little corner of your kitchen where you can put a tomato. You can get so many tomatoes off of one tomato plant. It's crazy. And that in and of itself could save you $50 over the course of the summer. And so there's so many different ways of doing things, ways of buying bulk, finding farmers markets, learning how to shop different places. Foraging. I mean, so many ways where you can really become more in tune with nature so that you can support your body with the best nutrition and it not have to be so burdensome on a person's bank account.
I am so interested in hearing more about foraging, but before we go there, I heard a quote today that said, if man made it, don't eat it. Which I think is great, right? But I'm wondering, why do you think that we as a population in general, all over the world, are more disconnected from nature today?
I think there's so many reasons. I think the world is sort of not set up to encourage connection, right? I think of just how we come into the world from the very moment we come into the world. And I never say anything to judge a person in any critical way, but I think it's just maybe things to think about. But we come into the world and we're birthed into hospitals and environments that are not perhaps natural, in ways that are not perhaps natural, like C-sections. I was a C-section baby. And again, it's not a criticism to a person. I'm pregnant right now. And if it came to the point where I needed a C-section, I would absolutely do that for my child. But it's not natural, right? It's not the natural way to be born. There's consequences to it. As opposed to, being born at home in a natural setting that's safe and peaceful, and there's not crazy lights everywhere, and there could be calm music playing. And so from the very beginning, I think there's a sort of disconnection that happens. And then we go to school, right? At 4, 5, and we're disconnected from our bodies from the very get-go, right? We have to raise our hand to ask if we can go to the bathroom or if we can have a snack. And we can only go to the bathroom and have a snack during these set times. That's not natural, right? If I have to go to the bathroom at 9 o'clock, but we're only allowed to go to the bathroom at break time at 10 o'clock, that has a big impact on a person, because over time, we slowly disconnect and we suppress our natural needs just for natural bodily functions. And we're taught different things, and just on and on I could go. And so I think by the time we reach adulthood, we haven't been encouraged to know ourselves. We've been encouraged to follow the rules, think in this way, act in this way. And there's just a lot of people running around not knowing who they truly are. Um, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up your pregnancy. I was hoping we could get into that. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you.
exciting. So you mentioned hospitals, C-sections, things like that. I've watched some of your stories and things, and you've alluded to doing things a little bit differently. Do you mind sharing just what you're willing to share about how you do plan to do the whole birthing process, and maybe actually even if you have a plan how to raise your baby in general, like in the beginning?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I could start back a little further even, and where I'm at right now, I am about 6 months pregnant. I am 6 months pregnant, and I haven't seen a doctor. I haven't gotten an ultrasound. I haven't taken any prenatals. I haven't done any of the common things. I haven't needed any antacids for heartburn. I haven't needed any stool softeners because I'm constipated. I haven't needed any anti-nausea medication. There's just a lot of things about my pregnancy that look different than maybe the common way, in the US at least, is practiced. And it reflects my deep trust in my body, my connection to myself, that, pregnancy and birth are the most natural of processes, and they don't require intervention. And again, if a person chooses intervention or wants intervention that feels supportive, that's a perfectly fine choice too. But I think we make a lot of choices out of fear, right? Like I've received a lot of fear from other people. What if something's wrong? What if you need to find this out? What about this? Well, I trust that everything is okay. I just trust that everything is okay. And yeah, as far as my birthing plan, I'm going to give birth at home with my husband. And that feels good to me, and that feels natural, and that feels like my body was created to do this. And my baby knows how to be born. Babies know how to be born, and women know how to give birth, even if we've never done it before. I think that we just know. And so I'm just in a state of trust. There's a lot of mindset work that I've done over the course of this, because we have a lot of ideas, I think, as women about how birth is the most painful experience we'll ever have. And it's scary, and it's hard, and it's traumatic, and, all the things that we see on the movies or on TV, or that we hear from other people even, which I think just, again, reveals our disconnection. And so I've done a lot of work over the last 6 months to really question those stories and question those beliefs, and feed my mind different stories from women who've had extraordinary birth experiences, women who feel like giving birth was the highlight of their life. And it was so joyful and so ecstatic and so wonderful. And so that's a reality that's available. It's available to me, it's available to you, it's available to all of us. And I think number one is believing it's available. And then we can take steps, of course, to ensure that, whether it's releasing the fears and the old stories, or nourishing our bodies in the best way possible. I assume I'd be having a very different pregnancy if I was living off of Taco Bell right now, but I'm not. And my diet's not perfect by any means, because I don't strive to have a perfect diet, but I've been eating nourishing foods. So yeah, and then in raising the baby, it's again in tune with nature. We intend to homeschool or unschool, or I don't really know how to define it, but we'll have our baby live our lives alongside of us, gardening, learning how to make food in the kitchen. My husband does conservation. We're both entrepreneurs. We read all the time, right? We'll just do those things with our child, and we'll explore who they are and what their unique gifts are and why they're uniquely here. And once we figure out what that is, we'll do everything we can to give them the tutoring or the classes or whatever they need to support their unique gifts in the world. And so I guess that's sort of the short of it.
I don't have my own children yet, but I plan to, and I definitely see myself following a similar path to what you're doing. One thing that I've heard, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this, speaking of the separation and putting the school system and just all those things that are, we're taught to do. What are your thoughts on, after you give birth, the baby sleeping with you, like with the family as a unit in a bed, versus, putting them in their own room in a crib when they're separate from you?
Totally. Yeah. I didn't make a nursery. It's another, I guess, funny thing that a lot of people, a lot of women, I guess, are doing at this point in their pregnancy is redoing a nursery. But I don't feel the need for that. I feel the baby will be best in our bedroom, and whether that's in our bed or we have a little crib for the side of the bed. And we'll just keep our baby with us until it feels right to put the baby in their own room. And I really can't imagine when that is, right? It's a year, 2 years. I don't really know, but I know that we'll know when it's right for them to move into their own room. And at that point, we'll get them their own room. But I do think that it feels natural for me to keep the baby close, for lots of reasons. I think it sounds a lot easier to wake up and breastfeed when the baby's right there rather than having to get up and stumble to another room and turn on the lights and wake up my husband when the baby's crying from the other room. And so I think there's a lot of reasons why it feels like the most natural, easiest choice to keep the baby with us.
The one thing I'm thinking of though is like, if the baby's in your bed or laying next to you or against your skin, aren't you going to worry about squishing it or just not sleeping at all?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think so. I don't imagine that, but like I said, I have a crib like right aside of my bed.
Mm.
So if that feels like a fear, I would simply just put the baby over there and then I could just, reach and grab them.
Right, right. Okay, you had a reel that went viral, very viral, and you said that your bathroom looks very different from other women's bathrooms, and you don't use tampons, pads, skincare products, body wash, face masks, or own a scale. What was the underlying message here, and why were so many women triggered by this post?
Oh gosh. Yeah, the underlying message was okay. So people were triggered by the post because I guess there's this thing of when you say you're not like other women or not like other girls, you're insinuating that you're better than them. I didn't even know this was a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. I wasn't intending that whatsoever. My intention with that post was to show that again, there's other realities available. There's other ways of doing things. Just like we commonly think you get pregnant and you go and you get an ultrasound and you start taking these pills and you start doing all these things and you give birth in a hospital. That's the common way of doing things. But there's other ways available. And I'm not saying it's wrong to own a scale or use tampons or use face masks or whatever the things I listed in there were. But also, maybe we don't need them. Maybe your life could be happier and fuller without them. My caption was largely actually about the scale, how I haven't weighed myself in, even as a pregnant woman, I have not weighed myself in, I forget how many years it's been now, 6, 7 years, because weighing myself doesn't feel supportive. It feels like it makes me crazy. And so that's just but women typically have scales in their bathroom and they weigh themselves. And I'm wondering sometimes if we think about whether or not that's really a supportive decision. If it feels supportive to weigh yourself and to check in with yourself around your weight, then great, by all means do it. But perhaps it's not necessary. And if there were any major fluctuations to our weight, we might notice it in our pants, in our jeans, and how they fit rather than having to get crazy over the scale going up a pound or down a pound.
Mhm. With that said, is it safe to say that you don't believe in counting calories or calories in, calories out?
Yeah, I don't personally count calories, but again, I'm not anti counting calories. I know people that works really well for them, and depending on your goals, it can be a great thing to do, right? If you're looking to build a lot of muscle, looking to lose some weight, it can be a thing that is beneficial for a person. And I have clients that I've helped them through the calorie counting thing, but I don't personally do it. And I think in large part, I don't think it's the most natural, connected way to live, because it sort of gets us into our head and out of our bodies,
Mhm.
and thinking, oh, this is the right amount of calories. This is how many calories I need. When the reality is every moment of our lives is a different moment where we have different needs and different desires, and the calorie amount will change.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like the foods that you're eating, I remember showing up to a family event and I had a huge container with a huge salad, all leafy greens and vegetables. And I had family members that looked at me like, "You're gonna eat all that?" And it was like, this is only like 400 calories. But to a lot of people, they look at the size, and so there's a disconnect between, you know, the size and the calories and what that equals as far as energy.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah, you're totally right. I think that's a obstacle for a lot of people, I think, when they start to change their diets to healthier diets or plant-based diets, particularly because the calories are so much lower. It's so much denser to eat a cheeseburger than it is to eat a big leafy green salad. And so that can be a really big obstacle for some people because it feels like you're eating so
Mhm.
much volume. But you're right, the calorie, or I like to say energy consumption, is so much lower.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a learning curve. So what would you say to someone who claims that they just have bad genes?
Hmm. Um, I would ask them why they think that. And I would ask them how they think that that belief about their genes or their health might be affecting their health. Because we get what we expect in a lot of ways. If I tell myself I am doomed in this scenario, then I'm probably doomed. If I tell myself that I can heal and health is available for me, then health and healing is most likely very available. And then I would, look at their habits, right? Our habits always reflect a belief that we have about ourselves. And so oftentimes people who have bad genes make choices that might not be optimal because they believe that, well, they're screwed anyway, right? So might as well just whatever, so I would question that. I don't believe that people are doomed. I think we all come into the world with different strengths and genetic weaknesses, and we don't all start from the very same place. And I don't think the same level of health is available for every single person, again, depending on how they come into the world. But I do believe health is absolutely available to every single person in their own unique way. There's always more available, there's always better available. And so let's explore working towards what the best could be for you as an individual.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is genes may play some sort of role, but your mindset and the way you think about yourself plays a bigger role than anything.
Right. Your mindset and how you think about yourself, which dictates the choices that you then make, right? Like every action that we take is a reflection of a thought that we first had. So it's both those things. How are you thinking and how are you acting plays a huge, 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 huge role.
How important is it to surround yourself with healthy people?
The most important, the most important. This, I'm so huge on this. This is why I have my community, my online community. This is why I host retreats. I mean, back to the Jesse Itzler and Sarah Blakely thing, it was hugely transformational for me to be surrounded by a mindset, a lifestyle that was that expansive for that amount of time. I mean, changed my life. Being around expansive people, being around like minded people will make all the difference in the world. All the difference. I often say to my clients, we make choices that are really reasonable based off of the context that we put ourselves in. So, what I mean by that is you have a group of friends and they like to go out and drink every Friday night. You want to stop drinking, but you go out with your friends every Friday night. The very natural, reasonable choice to make in that situation is to drink because that's just the context, right? You're in a drinking context. And so if you want to be in a hiking context or a making eating salads context or thinking in bigger ways context, then we need to put ourselves amongst people and in situations that are those contexts. It makes all the difference in the world. I think we have all probably heard the thing, you can't heal in the same environment that you got sick in. And that is the people that you spend your time with. That is the choices that you make. That is the job that you're in. That is the relationships that you're in. That's all of the things. And so this is a really tough one, I notice, with a lot of my clients and a lot of people because it's hard to lose relationships. It's hard to say goodbye to people. And I have experienced that very much myself. And it's for sure challenging. But I think what we always want to remind ourselves is that so much more is available. How are you missing out on something so much greater because you continue to limit yourself by this old way of doing things. You're not evolving into this newer version of yourself, which will necessarily mean being around new, more evolved people.
So, okay, we've all heard the saying that we're the sum of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And I'm sure a lot of your clients have, family and maybe friends. Yes, friends are easier. I mean, I guess it depends on the person. This is a biased perspective, obviously, but you can't really change your family over time. And more likely than not, you want to keep them in your life. But let's say that your family are not the healthiest people. And when your clients do have like the family unit that they're close with and they're in their lives all the time and they're part of, those 5 influential people and they are, living a completely different lifestyle, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think we all have to navigate it in our own individual ways. And I think we have to be really honest about it. That is the thing, right? We are the culmination of the people that we spend the most time with. I think there's 2 things. I think that we can learn to set up really strong internal boundaries, right? There's certain things that I don't talk about with my parents because they don't see it the same way. Birth being one of them brings up a lot of fear for them. And so I have very strong internal boundaries around that's just not something that we discuss because I'm not available for their fears and opinions on that. And I very much respect them, but I know what I want to do. I know what is best for me and my baby to do. And so that's how it's going to go. And so that's just a boundary that I have internally. And I think another really important boundary is how much time to spend with them, right? I'm not for cutting people out unless that's the absolute last case scenario, especially family. But we can limit time, right? If you're wanting to go in a different direction than your family, then maybe instead of seeing them once a week, you see them every other week. Maybe instead of being on the phone with your mom every day, you're on the phone with your mom 3 times a week, or whatever it is for that unique person, but sort of creating physical and internal separation from whoever it is who is shrinking you and bringing you down is, I think, a choice that we all ultimately have to wrestle with and we have to make if we sincerely want a different life and a different outcome than the people around us.
When you are evolving into this healthier person who sees yourself in a different light and you're waiting for your external world to kind of catch up with that, and the people around you need to see you as this new person, but they still see you as this less healthy version, then how do you kind of, step into that and let people know, like, how do those boundaries look?
Yeah, again, I think there's probably not one way and it looks different for everyone. I don't necessarily think it has to be I'm setting this boundary and I'm doing this thing. It doesn't have to be a thing that's vocalized. I think it's rather just like a thing that we do, right? Like instead of going over for family Friday night dinner where everyone's going to get drunk and eat chicken wings, you say, hey, I'm going to come over Sunday or Saturday morning, and maybe we can go for a walk around the block, right? It's sort of redirecting things. It's not even necessarily that you have to spend less time with people that you love, but you encourage different contexts, right? Friday night context is getting drunk and eating junk food. Saturday morning context could be getting up to go for a nice walk on the trail. And so that's the thing that I've done with my family. I won't do certain things because it doesn't feel like a healthy, inspiring context, but I will encourage us to do other things that do feel better. And as far as the internal stuff, it's really getting really clear on who you are and what you want and being honest with yourself about the fact that there will be sacrifices that have to be made, right? I might not get as much time with my loved ones because of this choice that I'm making, but this is who I am and this is what I want and this is what it requires. And I'm going to do that. And I will grieve what I'm losing through that. And I will go through all the internal emotions to process that. But this is ultimately my choice. And like I said with my mom, just deciding that there are certain topics that are off the table, right? If your parents are mad about your plant-based diet or you're not drinking choice, then like just don't be around them in eating situations or be around them less in eating situations and really hold your ground. I love you, mom and dad, but I am not available for opinions on this. This is what I'm doing for my health and happiness and well-being, period.
I think ultimately, like, it lets the people that you love, it gives them permission to kind of do the same
Mm.
and hold those same, not the same boundaries, but then it lets them kind of show up as this more powerful, independent, sovereign self. And they can do that too. If, you're doing that, you're kind of being the leader in that way.
Totally. Yeah. I've seen changes in my parents and my family over the years since I've been on my health and healing journey, in ways that I never expected. And it took years and years. And they're by no means where I'd love for them to be. But they've made changes, right? And I do think that's a lot of a reflection of what they've seen in me. And it does help other people, and they might kick and scream and throw a fight, and everyone's family and situation is different, but I just so deeply believe and live from the place that doing a good thing for me is doing a good thing for everyone else, whether they see it as that or not, whether the relationship dissolves or not. Maybe the relationship dissolves and you don't talk to that person for 20 years, but then they come back around and they tell you, thank you for that boundary, thank you for your example, I'm a changed person now, and it took 20 years.
Mhm.
We can never know. We have no idea. But I just so strongly believe that if it's a good thing for you, it's a good thing for the people you love. And it's a good thing for people in Russia, because we're just connected like that. We're just connected like that. So I just am committed to pursuing what feels good and right and true for me, and trusting that somehow in some way that's good for everyone else around me.
Yes, yes. So like I literally had truth bumps
Cool.
because because yeah, I mean, showing up as, I guess you could just put it as like your best self, like showing up that way is going to have a ripple effect through the whole world. So it's incredible how that happens. I love how you show up and you're completely non-judgmental towards your family and everyone that's, in your world. And you just lovingly care for them, and you just show up as who you are, and you hope to set a good example, which is what I try to do in my life too, but it becomes so hard sometimes. And I
Mm.
guess I'm just looking for any tips. That, I mean, I'm thinking there has to be other people that are in my position as well, or your position, and maybe you have a little bit more experience with it. It's like, how do you love them and not want to give them unsolicited advice, or maybe it is solicited and so you give it but then it's not followed, and that happens over and over again.
Yeah, it's tough. It is tough for sure. I have friends and family that um I feel this for, and I feel this with. I think one, I have a very strong boundary around not offering unsolicited advice. That is just an absolute no for me, because I really dislike how that feels when people do it to
Mhm.
me. I've received quite a bit of it since becoming pregnant. Mothers have more advice to give than anyone else on the face of the planet. And it just doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel good to receive that. And so that's a really strong boundary that I have. No matter how much I feel I have something to share that I think could help them, um, it's just a no. And I think the other thing is one of the things that I have learned over the years is that inspiration is the most powerful tool we have for transformation.
Mm.
I have been changed in the biggest ways by people just being themselves, living large, being healthy, being connected, being in their purpose. And so I think that to just be so deeply involved in ourselves, in our own processes, pursuing our own growth and expansion and health and wellness is the best thing we will ever do for anyone that we love. And I think it's a less powerful example or a less powerful gift to give the people we love, to offer unsolicited advice or to get distracted and bogged down by the sadness or the frustration of their situation when I have chosen to now redirect that energy towards, well, then I'm just going to become a better version of myself. And then I'm just going to become a better version of myself. And I'm just going to continue to work on that better version of myself. And I have seen that that is the most effective way to inspire change, because people like to be inspired, right? I like to be inspired. When I see someone just like in their zone, doing their thing, I'm like, okay, I'll change. What do I got to do? Because I want that, right? Whereas when I see someone, oh, do this, eat this, do, then I'm kind of like, man, whatever, I don't really care. But when it's just like coming so authentically through them, and so I think that's just where I land, is just how can I be the fullest, biggest, most beautiful, truest version of myself, and trusting that that's going to be the best thing I can do for anyone.
I love it. I love that answer. I have a couple of rapid fires for you.
Okay.
So first off, how do you feel about juice cleanses?
Oh man, is that a rapid fire? That's a long answer one for me.
Long answer.
Yeah, I think there's a time and a place for them. I think it's like a diet ultimately, where it's like a short-term thing that we are going to do that we might expect big results from. But if it's not a lifestyle change, if it doesn't lead to a change in mindset, which leads to a change in habits, then I think it's kind of futile. I know people who've done juice cleanses where it's been really positive and impactful for them, and people who've done juice cleanses, long-term juice cleanses, that have nearly died. Very close people to me. And so I can't say a one size fits all. I'm pro juice cleanse or I'm anti juice cleanse. I think that in working with an individual, with a client, we really explore whether that's the right choice for them or not.
Okay. Along the same lines, what are your thoughts on intermittent fasting?
Man, it's going to sound like all my answers are super diplomatic, but it's sort of the same thing, where I think there's a really great time to intermittent fast. And I think there's really great times not to. Intermittent fasting was really beneficial for me at one point in my healing journey. And then it got to the point where it really wasn't. And right now I'm pregnant, and intermittent fasting does not seem like the move to do right now. And not just because I'm pregnant, but because it just doesn't feel supportive. And so I think these things trend, like intermittent fasting or juice cleansing, and it becomes the thing, right? The thing that we should all jump on. It's the golden elixir. It's the thing that's going to solve all your problems. And we have to let that go. We have to let it go in believing that there's anything that's going to solve all our problems. Sometimes it's good to intermittent fast. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's good to juice cleanse. Sometimes it's not. What is good always is connecting to ourselves, period.
Coffee, caffeine?
Uh, I'm not against it altogether. I don't drink coffee, don't love it. I think coffee is super abused in our culture. And a lot of the problems we have with caffeine is the way overconsumption of caffeine. But I think if you want to have a little 4-ounce cup of coffee every now and then, by all means, there's tons of antioxidants in coffee. I don't think it's a terrible thing to have, but I think it's definitely a thing to question its usage of in our modern day culture.
When in Rome, right?
Yeah, there you go. When in Rome, have a cup of coffee.
And then the last one, I have to ask you this. Where do you get your protein?
I get my protein in this banana berry smoothie. I get my protein in everything that I eat. Everything has protein. You know this. Every plant has protein in it. And so when you eat a sufficient amount of calories, you get a sufficient amount of protein. I'm growing a baby that's super healthy and on track. And I haven't consumed any protein. I mean, maybe I have, but I don't go out of my way to consume protein. I just go out of my way to make sure that I get a wide variety of food in me, a wide variety of nutrients and vitamins, and I eat enough. And so I get enough protein.
Beautifully said. I have one final question for you, but before I ask, where can people find you?
Cool. So I'm most active on Instagram. Instagram is my favorite social media outlet. I'm also on Facebook. Both of those places are my name, Olivia Hertzog. You can find me. Other than that, I have my website, which is also oliviahertzog.com, where I have my community, my retreats, my recipe course, my coaching, all the things that I offer and do. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Wonderful. I will have all of that in the show notes, of course. And my last question I ask everyone at the end, what is your number one health tip? So whether it's mindset, diet and nutrition, physical, emotional, just the one piece of advice that you would like everyone to know.
The one piece of advice is definitely getting to know yourself. Like I said at the very beginning, health is connection to self and disease is disconnection from self. So in knowing yourself, what is it that is the move for you to do right now, right? Is it tweaking your nutrition? Is it going to the gym more? Is it putting up that boundary with that person? Is it whatever the thing is to do? I really think that the surest way to have extraordinary health is to be in a state of connection to self and honoring what it is that we uniquely need at our unique point in our lives. So that's my answer. Connection.
I love that. I feel like we barely got the tip of the iceberg of all that encompasses Olivia's knowledge. But thank you so much for being here, Olivia. And if you don't follow her already, make sure you go and follow her because the nutrition and the health advice and the motivation and everything that you put out is just so great and so needed in the world today. So I really appreciate what you do. And thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yeah, it was a joy. Thanks for having me.
That concludes this episode. If this resonated with you, please give it a rating and review. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out on Instagram. I would love to hear from you. Links are in the show notes. I sincerely thank you for your time and your presence.